He did blow up innocent people. That you crossed the line into terrible then.
Okay, agreed, but only because he could.
Yeah.
And he didn't have any emotional attachment to humanity in general. So I'm not saying it was right,
Also,
but in his defense,
that doesn't make
his
you
point
less.
across.
He basically just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of Skynet. That's really what it was all about.
I don't think that was anything about what it was.
It was basically he hated technology and like the advancement.
That was it. Right. And he had some super good, interesting points.
Valid points.
We should have
Quaid is the Unabomber.
Some night we'll have an episode and we'll do serial killers or something of that sort.
Yeah.
I don't know if we could come up with 10.
Fucking A, we could. I could come up with 20 off the top of my head.
With serial killers, but I don't know if I would. He would be included in that.
Yeah.
I know he is a serial killer, but
why wouldn't he be included in that?
Because there's so many good ones.
You're saying that
so
there's
many good ones.
10 other ones that are better than him.
Oh yeah, there's 40 other ones that are better than him.
Wow. Well, you guys are seriously twisted, so I'm not arguing with you about that.
Yeah. Well, Adam and I already talked about this. We want to do that in October.
For like closer to Halloween or something.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea at all.
Top horror movies, stuff like that. Serial killers.
Who won last week? It was a tie, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just like that bullshit game.
That's stupid. Dude, how about that dumbass game? Only the Cleveland Browns could knock out a losing streak by not winning.
Yeah, by tying.
Like, that's so unbelievable.
It is. It was. I didn't watch it. I listened to it on the radio because I was driving. But I was pouring down rain coming across 80, and I assumed that it was really bad weather there.
Yeah, I think that's what part of the, or not part of, but a large part of the issue was being such a shitty game. But I just listened to it on the radio. It had to have been a terrible game to watch, no matter who you were rooting for. Because I'm a Browns fan, but even when they started coming back, it was like, geez, it was almost like a handout. You know what I mean?
Yeah, many picks. And then they both should have kicked field goals and won.
Yeah, and they still couldn't win.
No, they couldn't do it.
Pretend like that week didn't happen.
Yeah.
No one has a loss, though. They're still both undefeated.
Yeah.
Right. They're also tied for last place in the division.
Yeah. You know what'd be awesome is if like Cleveland goes 0-16 this year. Because then they'll have like
15.
All ties.
Yeah, all ties.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I wonder. So there has to be a number that the odds of that. I wonder what those odds are. It's got to be astronomical.
Yeah, like 1 in a zillion.
Because in theory, it's still possible.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. If you were to play,
we should find out what the number is.
If you were to play football for 1 billion years, eventually there will be an 0-16 record.
I don't know about that.
Maybe not.
I mean, that's like they say. You could put monkeys just hammering keys on a keyboard, and they could do that for 1 million years. Eventually, they'll type out Shakespeare. So if eventually they'll type out Shakespeare, an 0-16 record is definitely gonna happen.
Where did you get that analogy from?
I don't know. I heard it a long time ago.
I mean, it's not a bad analogy. I'm not saying you shouldn't have used it. I'm just so curious where that came from.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
You should have said, given the opportunity again, you should probably say, came up with it, man.
Yeah, but somebody smarter than me came up with it. That's the thing.
Yeah, I've heard that before too.
Yeah.
Oh, now everybody's heard of it.
I think that's a physics. I think that's a physics analogy.
Sounds like a bullshit one. You put a bunch of monkeys on there, they're not going to type out Shakespeare.
I don't care how many years, dude.
They got jerk off all over the keyboard and fling shit everywhere.
Sounds like a Beatles recording session.
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah. Quaid, did you mute yourself?
No, just when you guys talk, it cuts me out.
Okay, so we need to keep talking.
I'm trying to copy all these down real quick.
Let us know when you're ready, and I'll hit the intro.
If they weren't so long, geez, couldn't you come up with shorter titles, Adam?
I know. A couple of them are long.
Okay.
Actually, all of them are long.
Yeah, every single one of them. They're all like 2 really long words or 3 average size words. Okay.
He does have Homeland on there.
Yeah.
Okay, one word title. One of them. Thanks for pointing it out, asshole. Yeah. Okay, I'm super close here.
That's what she said.
Haha. Tuna, are you getting hit with the big bad hurricane, or is it staying north of you?
That's north of us.
He'll probably hit us.
Yeah,
Probably hit us more than it'll hit South Florida.
Yeah, we're gonna get tons of rain probably.
I'm keeping an eye on Isaac, but that one looks like it's gonna go under and past us.
Dude, there's a lot of storms out there. The whole Atlantic off. Like,
I know, it's just like all blowing up at once.
Well, it's the end of the world. You realize that, right?
Yeah.
Have you gotten used to Nick being down there? Have you gotten used to just like hurricane season? Just it's like whatever. Does it stress you out at all?
Not until there's a storm in the ocean. I mean, shit, it's hurricane season for half the year.
Right, but I mean, okay,
June
yeah, I guess once
October 30th.
I guess once they start watching these storms, I'm saying,
yeah.
Is there there has to be a certain amount of stress that comes with every single one of them, isn't there?
You start getting like once you see the cone, because they'll track it out to where if it's probably going to hit you, they'll track it there. And once you see it turn from a 3 to a 4, that's when shit gets nuts.
You haven't had to evacuate since you were down there, were you? But you didn't come close last year?
There were evacuations called for both Matthew and Irma.
Wasn't Irma the most recent one?
Yeah.
And wasn't that the one where somebody created a fake Facebook account?
No, that was Matthew.
That was Matthew. Dude, that was hilarious.
Dude, it was. That was one of the funniest Facebook troll jobs I've ever seen.
I wish I could remember some of the things that he said, but it was so funny, dude.
Yeah, that was quality.
We could do a top 10 ultimate like Twitter fails, like people posting shit accidentally, you know, like Anthony Weiner type stuff.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm ready whenever you guys are. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to hit it right now.
Hit it, man.
Damn it.
Nick, failing always.
We're just doing our normal setup, correct? We're not doing a draft?
Correct.
Gotcha. Hey, welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Master Debate with Quaid. I am your host, Quaid. I'm joined by Nick and once again, Adam. We have a topic for the ages once again. Tonight, we're going to talk about the top 10 TV shows of all time. That means yesterday, today, and the future, I don't think we can do that. So yesterday and today, I guess. Adam, you're coming off of a tie. How does it feel?
I feel a lot like the Steelers, I think, today. Tying the Browns. It's pretty much equivalent tying Nick.
Yeah, like your opinion.
Nick, do you feel more like the Steelers right now or more like the Browns?
I feel like Donovan McNabb about 10 years ago when he got done playing. He's like, I didn't know we could end in a tie.
Right. I think that they need to do away with that rule. I hate the fact that you could spend several hours watching a sporting event and then you could leave the stadium and it be a tie. I think that's the absolute most asinine rule they could ever come up with.
You know what they should do? Like the NHL, they did away with the tie by putting the shootout in. I think with the NFL, what you do is you have your kickers line up and just kick field goals, and each round you back up 5 yards.
Even back up 1 yard.
That might take a really long time.
But let the defense in there to rush them. You know what I mean? Like actually have a play so you could get blocks and stuff. That would be really exciting.
That would.
If it was just two jokers out there kicking balls, no one would even care.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. But I would much rather see something like that format than any scenario where it could end in a tie. I just think that's stupid.
I agree.
Yeah.
With that being said, as a Browns fan, it's kind of a small victory. And by small victory, I mean huge-ass victory.
You've already had a better year than you did last year.
Yeah, isn't that embarrassing to be excited about a tie in week 1?
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly worse than a loss. Let's jump into it, boys. Since it was a tie last week, we're going to go back 2 weeks, and the winner 2 weeks ago was Adam. So Adam is going to get a chance to share his list first. Then Nick will share his list, and Adam can either bring one up or defer. Again, we're doing the top 10 TV shows of all time. Adam, let's hear your list.
So, no particular order. I have The Golden Girls, Freaks and Geeks, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Insomniac with Dave Attell, Chappelle Show, Mr. Show with Bob and Dave, Eastbound and Down, Homeland, The Wire, and Breaking Bad.
Okay. Interesting picks. Nick, let's hear your 10.
All right. Going down and dirty, we got Cat House, that old HBO gem.
Wow.
Martin, Small Wonder, Weeds, Californication, Black Mirror, Sopranos, Frasier, Seinfeld, and Wonder Years.
You took like a whole bunch of the HBO greatest hits.
No, I got Sopranos on there. That's pretty much it.
Well, Showtime and Weeds. Is Showtime, Weeds, and Californication?
Yes.
Oh, I was thinking those were all HBO.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'd be lying if I didn't say I used to have HBO as a kid growing up, and I definitely used to watch Cat House late night. Any boy growing up that had HBO waited up for Cat House, and we're convinced that that's the way the real world operated.
Hell yeah, go to the Bunny Ranch, Reno, Nevada.
Right. I think that place is still there and in business as far as I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
That dude still runs it.
Well, I'll be a son of a bitch. I'm going out west at the end of this month. Guess where I'm stopping?
Might as well.
All right. Adam, would you like to bring one to the table first, or are you going to defer to Nick?
Okay, I will go first, and we'll see what happens. Normally, we seem to defer, but I'll go first. And I will take probably my favorite show of all time is The Chappelle Show. And he has so many skits that were so funny and groundbreaking, like the Black Ku Klux Klan member, or the race draft. I mean, there are still things to this day that I quote from that. I mean, on a weekly basis. And that's why I think the Chappelle Show is one of the best shows of all time. Unfortunately, it was only like 3 seasons, I guess, but those seasons were real gems. So that's my number one.
Nick, what do you got to put up against the Chappelle Show?
I got, well, I'm going to go ahead and say it, the greatest show, the best sitcom of all time, the one that you could still find on 24/7, and that's Seinfeld. This show has completely been immersed into the culture of America. We did the quotable movies. This show isn't just quotable movies, it's most quotable episodes with this. Seinfeld has everything. The characters that were in this show were greatly developed. Their side stories were hilarious. It was a show about nothing, yet everything in it was completely interesting. And it went on for like, I believe, was it 12 seasons? It went on for a long time. And it stayed interesting and funny and relevant throughout the entire show.
Adam, thoughts?
Okay, like I've watched the Seinfeld show. I thought it was a funny show, but I never was like on these. I know a lot of people were really into it and they watched it religiously. Like a lot of shows, like Friends, the same way. But Cheers. But I never was really. I mean, I thought it would be if it was on, nothing else was on. Maybe I'd watch it. Like I didn't think it was so good. But I tell you this much: if Dave Chappelle show's on, like if they run reruns, even if I have them all on DVD, which I do, I'll still watch it with commercials because I don't care because it's so funny. When you have like the Rick James story or all the Charlie Murphy stuff, basically, Prince, I'm Rick James, bitch. You know, like these are like classic things. Whereas the Seinfeld show, yes, I mean, it's a beloved show, but for me, I never was. I watched it. I thought it was all right and thought it was worth watching whenever I was watching it, but I never made a point to watch it ever. So, I mean, it's a good show. I mean, if you probably looked it up, see, it's definitely in the top 10, I would think. I don't know, though.
All right, you bring up classic things, and yeah, there's some funny bits on Dave Chappelle, but it doesn't get more classic than the Soup Nazi or George posing, getting the glamour shots, or the nip slip from Elaine, or the contest where they all tried not to masturbate and see who could hold out the longest. These are classic, iconic episodes that doesn't just fall into the people that watch Comedy Central. This falls into, this was an event. Seinfeld was an event that happened every Thursday night at 8 o'clock, and the whole country gathered around their TVs, and they watched these goofy episodes of these 4 people that were hilarious and it all in their own right. Okay. I mean, Seinfeld, it's just, I don't know. It doesn't get more American than that. And on Today, how are you going to argue against America?
I could argue against it, and I'll tell you why. That was, a sitcom show that but it was kind of in the same vein as Cheers and all the other ones. I'm not saying it wasn't hilariously funny. I'm just saying the same characters and this and that and the same, comedy. Whereas Dave Chappelle, he completely revolutionized like going blue on TV, essentially, with, like pushing the bounds of like racial comedy or other things. Just like, I mean, the R. Kelly, when they have him like doing the Pee on You video. I mean, these are things that, like, I don't think people ever saw on TV before. Well, Seinfeld is a good show. I'm not saying it's not an original show, but I mean, the comedy and stuff, I'm not saying, if you want, but it's like, I don't know. I'm not saying it's any different from any of the other shows on your list.
See, but Seinfeld, you say Seinfeld didn't push the bounds. Seinfeld was on broadcast television, which is a whole separate animal than cable. Cable, you could get away with saying fuck if you really want to. The only thing you have to adhere to is your advertisers. You don't have to worry about FCC. Dave Chappelle didn't have that regulations, whereas Seinfeld did, and they touched some majorly sensitive issues going through their career. There was a lot of racial humor. I mean, the whole Chinese dinner episode, that was nothing but racist humor. There's situations where they accidentally become basically members of the Nazi party, or they touch on issues that got on not cable television but broadcast television, which is a big difference. And they pushed it on.
They didn't do it in a way like Dave Chappelle did it. They did it in a cheesy way. Like it just, I'm not saying it's a cheesy show, but like their comedy is so, it's not, you act like they're pushing, maybe some of the subjects are, interesting or crazy, but really like Dave Chappelle pushed the limits. I mean, completely. And you say they can say the F word or whatever. No, they're not. Back then, they're on cable TV. I mean, I can't believe half the stuff he did they even got away with, but it was so good that they loved it.
That's because he didn't have to deal with the FCC. The only thing I had to worry about,
but there's still networks and advertisers. That's who pays the bills. So, I mean, someone's got, and obviously people love that show. So,
no, I mean, it was
and I'm not saying people didn't love Seinfeld. People love Seinfeld. So it really comes down to, is Seinfeld was good, but I think Dave Chappelle revolutionized comedy with his TV show, with his skit show. It's so much more racy, and that's become the norm ever since.
Okay, right, let me chime in here.
Okay.
Well, go ahead. If you got something to say, Nick, go ahead.
I mean, he had a skit show. I mean, that's the thing. What makes his skit show different from In Living Color or Kids in the Hall or The State? That was, I'm going to put my balls in it. They touched on some sexual issues there. I mean,
okay. I'm going to time you out. I am going to chime in here. I think you both seriously made some great arguments, and I will tell you, if I had to sit down and watch one of these shows and I got to choose, without a doubt, hands down, it would be Chappelle's show. I think because of the time that I grew up, Adam made some great points that I do agree with you, Adam, that he revolutionized comedy, stand-up comedy, Comedy Central. I mean, he probably put Comedy Central on the map. I don't know that for sure. I can't think of what would have come before him.
South Park.
I guess South Park probably, yeah. So Seinfeld, I never got into Seinfeld at all. I always thought it was stupid and dumb, especially when I was younger. As I've gotten older, I have learned to appreciate it, and I've learned to appreciate the humor and the dryness that they have in that show. The winner for round one goes to Seinfeld based off of the fact that I think Nick has a great point in the fact that Seinfeld revolutionized more than just one small genre. It was the first real big thing, and it has lasted, what now, a couple of decades at least, and it is still relevant. People quote it on a regular basis still to this day. It's hard for me to go against Chappelle's show because I am a huge fan of that show, but in the grand scheme of things, round one goes to Seinfeld.
Yeah, no soup for you. Sorry.
I don't get it. I never watched that show. I don't get your joke.
All right, round two. Let's move along. Nick, you get to choose your first one for round two.
All right.
Hey, do me a favor. Talk about the Pirates. I got to get my other earphones. These ones are killing my ears, okay?
The Pirates.
They're terrible.
Quite embarrassing.
Of all things to make us talk about. I mean, I have a Pirates hat on, but
the talk Pirates about the Browns of the MLB.
It's funny. Like if you listen to The Fan here in Pittsburgh, they have I don't know why they insist on continuing to talk about the Pirates. They
they got the contract.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know, but it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're sitting there talking about the Pirates all day long. It's the first week of NFL or college football. There's Penn State game. So all these crazy things happen in the city, and they're sitting there talking about the Pirates. So I'm like, and they're talking about what a bullpen they have, what a force to be reckoned with.
Right. Yeah, that was my bad. I shouldn't have said talk about the Pirates.
I could bitch about the Pirates all day though.
I just panicked because my ear was. That thing was killing my ear, and you were wearing a Pirates hat, so I just panicked and was like, "Talk about the Pirates." All right, let's move along, little doggies. Nick, round 2. Who you bringing up?
All right, I am going to bring up my favorite show of all time, and that is Californication. Now, this show was on Showtime. And it is absolutely hilarious. It's about a writer who's a bit of a drunk and a fuck up. His name's Hank Moody. And season 1, he basically just puts his dick in anything that moves, which is great for the viewing audience because you see a lot of boobs and a lot of nice boobs. And you think the show is basically nothing but, following the drunken escapades of Hank Moody, but really the show actually has a lot of in-depth writing and a lot of heart. The relationship built between him and his ex-wife is very good. It's very riveting. Same goes with the relationship between him and his daughter. And yeah, you get the humor along the way, and there's a lot of extremely funny parts. His agent, Charlie, is possibly the funniest character ever written into a show. And I don't know, it was 6 seasons long, and when the show ended, I was sad because I was going to miss those characters. Like, I wanted to see what happened next. I still, from time to time, check in to see if they're going to make a Californication movie. It really is the best show I've ever seen.
Okay, so that's super interesting. I'm interested to hear more about what you have to say about the show because personally I've never watched it, but I have heard people over the years, talk about it. So, Adam, what do you have to go up against Nick's favorite show of all time, Californication?
I'm going to go up against it with another one of my favorite shows of all time, and that's Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad, for people in this country, I really feel like this was the first, like the term binge watching. I know people have done it in the past, but I think when people are trying to start to catch on to this, or everyone was like, I didn't watch it right from the beginning. I didn't tune in weekly. Basically, after they were almost done, basically everyone was like, dude, you have to watch that show. And I binged it, and I'm glad I binged it because I don't think I could watch that show week to week without, like, I'd hate waiting to see what happens. Like, that show is like on the top of most people's lists. Modern Netflix people have watched Breaking Bad, and they love that. That was a show that I would actually watch all the way through again. It's just an interesting story when you have this guy who he faces, he thinks he's possibly dying of cancer. He's a chemistry teacher, and then he goes down this route of making meth and how close they are to getting caught, or all these different situations they're in. And it's like, it was just such a well-written show. And really, I don't know if you guys ever watched it. There's like a prequel show, Better Call Saul. And that's a really good show. I'm not really sure. They're on AMC, so I don't know. This is another one that probably won't get any real credit until it's about 4 or 5 seasons in. But Breaking Bad, to me, kind of changed the way people viewed TV. Instead of tuning in every Thursday at 8 to watch Seinfeld or whatever, Friends or all these other shows, this became something that people started to binge watch. And then the word got out and more people were binge watching it because there's 8 seasons of it. I think it really changed the way their viewing habits of TV went. So that's why I like Breaking Bad. So
while you were talking about that, it made me think about, the first show that I ever binge watched, and the first one that comes to my mind, I think the first one I ever binge watched was Orange is the New Black, which is not all that old. I don't know. It's probably 5 or 6 years old. So you're probably looking at, 2012 or 13 or something. It made me curious. So I looked up Breaking Bad. What I found was that it was filmed from 2008 to 2013. Does that sound right to you, Adam?
Yeah, I would say that's about right.
I was thinking in my mind
maybe it went a little longer.
That it went a little bit longer, but anyhow, that's interesting.
It only went 6 seasons.
Is that what it was? 6?
Yeah. Now, all right, Breaking Bad. I've never seen it, so I can't really argue against the show. Now, one thing I can argue against, and this kind of gets into the binge-worthy thing, because I watch Californication binge style as well. But one of the reasons why I have not watched Breaking Bad is because of the hour runtime. It sounds silly, but the fact is that there's 6 seasons, and you're talking what 12 episodes a season? That's 12 hours a season.
Yeah, dude, get with it. It's 2018. This is how people spend their lives.
So much fucking time. If I were to
I know, but if you watch it, Nick, I swear, if you watch it, you'll be like, dude, you're right. That show's awesome. And I'm not for this debate. I'm just saying, I think you should watch it.
No, and I keep telling people I'm going to watch it because I am constantly told that. And I'm like, yeah, no, I need to check it out. But the fact is, I'll probably fit in a rewatch of Californication in before I get to Breaking Bad again, because I know I can knock a season out in 2.5 days.
Okay, question. So what's the runtime on the Californication?
It's like a half hour.
Which is super convenient. I understand your point there.
And like the thing with the half hour runtimes are you get to the meat of the story, a lot quicker. Yeah, I mean, no matter what happens in hour shows, and there are hour shows that I like, you are going to have some lull time that, it could still be fairly interesting. It's not going to be the most interesting part of the show, but I don't have time for lull time. I just personally, I'm
telling you, Nick, this isn't my sales pitch to win this. This is my sales pitch to get you to watch it. You're not going to run into all this lull time in Breaking Bad. It is such a good show. Everything in it, it's not filler in the show. Like, it's like a movie a week. It would be almost like taking a 2-hour movie, cutting it down to, it's like 40 minutes. It's a network TV show with commercials. So yeah, it's an hour, but it's really not much more than Californication.
I think it's 50 minutes.
Maybe 45.
Movies are 50 minutes, because I tried watching Walking Dead.
Dude, I was just thinking about that, and I was going to ask you guys if either one of you have gotten into The Walking Dead. I personally have not, but I did really expect that to make the list.
Well, I've watched all of Walking Dead, and that's another one I kind of binge watched the first several seasons. Then I started watching it like I was caught up. But I'm not saying it's a bad show. Definitely had its moments. Like early on, it's a really good show. But the story in Walking Dead has repeated itself over and over and over again. Basically, there's a bad guy, and they have to overcome this bad guy. And so the season there, it's basically the same story, just with different things happening. So, I mean, it's a good show, but the Breaking Bad it just evolves so much throughout the show. It's not like they're just trying to cash in on seasons. It's actually like you could actually make another season, and people would still tune in and not think they're overdoing it. So, I mean, I think that's why. I love that show, and Nick, you have to watch it.
No, the popularity is there. You can't argue against popularity. Everybody loves it. And yeah, I would like to sit down and watch it one day, but the idea of sitting there thinking of 6 seasons of 12 hours just seems like a daunting task. Now, whereas Californication, I'm not going to elaborate more on runtime, but like this show is something that like it gives something to everyone. I mean, again, you have the love story between him and his ex-wife, that on again, off again thing that is actually very well developed. You have the father-daughter relationship that's very well developed, but you also have the drunken fraternizing parts that, you know, that were the best parts of Entourage. And it's just, I don't know. It's the best development of characters I've ever seen. It's one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. Yeah, it's.
I'll tell you why it's the best show for character development that you've ever seen, because you haven't seen Breaking Bad. If you saw that, then Nick, you have to watch it. I don't care. You have to watch it.
You're saying that because you haven't watched Californication.
No, I couldn't. Is that the one with the guy who is from Happy Gilmore? Kevin Nealon?
Yeah, David Duchovny. No, Weeds is the one from Happy Gilmore, which is also
those two shows to me are the same show.
They're not,
and I've watched neither of them.
Yeah, so like, what are you talking about?
I think Breaking Bad just changed the way everyone views TV. They made Netflix like Netflix basically, and everyone binge watches everything because of Breaking Bad.
I was binge watching Weeds on Netflix, but when Breaking Bad was in its second season.
But you're the only one. No one else has ever seen it.
Question.
Yeah.
Give me a short answer, Nick. Do you binge watch, or have you binge watched, many shows?
Yes.
It's something that you do. I'm not asking to judge. It's just interesting to me because I think I'm the minority in the fact that I have binge watched 2 shows that I can ever remember. One of them, the first one was Orange is the New Black, and then I binge watched that Making a Murderer show on Netflix.
Yeah.
Those are the only 2 I've ever binge watched. Adam, what about you? You binge watch a lot of them?
Yeah. I feel like whenever I'm gonna watch a show, I want to know everything. So yeah, if it's available to me and I'm gonna sit down and watch TV, like I don't have a lot of time, but if I do, I like to binge watch stuff. And I like the way things are now. Like I don't have to wait like week to week. And just think about shows like, it does say a lot about the viewership of Seinfeld or Cheers or Friends, one of these old shows. People didn't like even have TiVo whenever these shows are going on, or DVR, and they would actually make a point to like schedule that into their week.
Yeah, they actually sat down in front of the television at that set time every week.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
Or they set their VHSs up to record it.
Yeah,
right, and the quality was terrible when you did that, though.
Remember in the TV guide, it would have the code that you'd punch into your VCR so that it knew to like turn on at that time.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
We never had one that fancy. We had to actually set the timer.
I remember when Santa Claus brought me a VCR that fancy.
Here, Nick, here's another good point. When you're watching on Netflix, Breaking Bad, you can skip the intros now. Netflix has it, so you can skip the intro. That saves you a couple of minutes. You said it's an hour, but it's really shorter because of commercials that you don't have to watch. I mean, you should watch it. It's not that much more in Californication. Like, really, maybe 10 more minutes an episode.
Okay, I'm going to make my decision right now. I will say this is interesting for me because I've never actually watched a single episode of either one of these shows. So I'm going strictly off your arguments. I do think that, Nick, you made some good, interesting points. You kind of brought the storyline into the argument. You brought the plot, some of the characters and whatnot. Adam, you didn't necessarily do that as much or as well of a job. However, you did make a point that I agree with in the fact that Breaking Bad kind of revolutionized the way we watch TV in terms of an actual binge watching. And based off of me hearing that from more people than Californication, Adam and Breaking Bad take round 2. I do have an interest in watching both of these shows.
Well, start Californication because like you'll still be the same age you are when you started it when you're done.
I watched Trailer Park Boys. Did you ever see that show?
Yeah,
it was a Netflix show. I mean, it's like Canadian trailer park guys. Okay, I was like deathly ill with the flu one weekend, and I think from Friday until Monday, I watched almost that entire show. And like that is, I think it's hour-long episodes. I mean, it was like every hour I was awake, I was watching that show. Because it's like 10. It's like now it's like 10 seasons.
That's crazy.
To me, that's honestly crazy. Like my mind, I guess my mind just doesn't work that way.
No, honestly, it was probably the biggest waste of my life ever.
And who would you like to? Really, it was a bigger waste of time than this. That makes me feel good. How about you, Nick?
Well, I wasn't thinking about this.
It was the second biggest waste of your time. Adam, who are you bringing to the table for round 3?
Okay, man, this is tough. I mean, there are some really good shows.
On your list?
Yeah, on my list. I'm thinking of very good shows, but some of them may be hard to explain if you haven't seen them. But okay, I'll say this, and I'll pick this show because I was completely consumed with this show, and it was a show that had to wait week to week, which I hated because I watched it right from the beginning, and that's Homeland. And the show itself, I think it's like 4 seasons, but you could say, and I'm not saying it's not good now, it's still good, and it's pretty politically topical, but the first season of Homeland is like the most intense show I've ever seen. And I'm not kidding. I am not making it up. Basically, I don't want to give too much away because I'm sure neither of you have watched it, but essentially, there's a war going on after 9/11. A guy gets captured in Afghanistan. He's a soldier from the United States. So they bring him back, and there's like a tip off to the CIA that this guy is actually like going to be like a lone wolf type terrorist. Like he's actually working for the other side. Like they turned him. And it's like the CIA agent hunting this guy down and trying to figure out if he's a bad guy or if he's just, a war vet who's finally home type of thing. And this guy gets in such situations because of his notoriety of basically being captured, and then he ends up running for a government office. And it's just wild. I mean, absolutely insane. Like keep you, and I don't know, that may be a half-hour show, Nick, in case you haven't watched it. But Homeland, that first season especially, is so, so good.
Question, Adam, is Homeland actually still on TV?
Yeah, it is actually. It is still on.
I thought that it was. It's on. I think it's on one of the main cable stations, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on HBO. Like they've evolved the show from that premise, and they keep it pretty tough. Or it's on Showtime. It's on Showtime. Like there are a couple reasons why I even keep the movie channels. One's boxing, and quite frankly, after this fight on Saturday, maybe I'll get rid of it. Just to get rid of it.
Come on, you got Tyson Fury coming up. That's going to be a good fight too.
I know, but it's just like they tease me into these things. But Homeland, I legitimately kept Homeland. I legitimately kept Showtime just for Homeland. That's how much I love that show.
I don't want to get too far off topic here, so we're gonna recycle back here to Homeland and give it to Nick. However, quick question: in terms of boxing, hasn't that really gone downhill a lot in the last several years?
Yeah, boxing has become so political because there's networks. Every big fight is either on HBO or it's on Showtime. And if you're a fighter, you have a contract with HBO or you have a contract with Showtime, essentially, and your fights are on that network. So if you're one of the top guys or you're the title holder, you're a Showtime fighter, and maybe the number 1 contender, another title holder in your weight class is on HBO, you guys never fight because the networks can't get along enough to make the fight happen because they're greedy. And it pisses me off, and that's why I hate it. And they've ruined the sport of boxing. I mean, there's still great fights, but they're very rare.
Right. I used to like to watch boxing a lot. Now, I guess the last boxing match I watched was what was it? Mayweather and what's that
McGregor
guy's name? McGregor, which is actually quite entertaining. But you get back in the days of you remember Roy Jones Jr.? He was such a badass.
He was. I love Roy Jones. He's one of my favorite guys of all time.
He was so arrogant in such a perfect way because in his prime, he backed it up. Like everything he
Yeah.
did showboating wise, it was fun to watch. Actually, today I was just talking with a couple of my buddies, and we were quoting Mike Tyson quotes. Speaking of great boxers, and did you guys ever watch the clip of him being interviewed? And he talks about how he broke his back. He's like, the interviewer's like, "What happened?" He's like, "I broke my back," and the guy's like, "What do you mean by that?" He's like, "My back is broken." He said, "You mean like discs or muscles?" He goes, "No, I mean spinal."
Mike Tyson. I mean, he's a legend. I mean, when Mike Tyson was in his heyday, boxing was in its heyday. Honestly,
yeah, dude.
Everyone loved
when
that.
he grew up. His mom was a hooker, and he slept in the same bed as his mother until he was 16 years old. You imagine the stuff he saw and participated in growing
Shit like that could turn you into a rapist.
Yeah, no kidding. He should have had a free pass for everything. Okay, back to Homeland.
I know what we're talking about.
Homeland is where Adam is going. Nick, what do you have to go up against Homeland?
All right. So when we were growing up, everybody knew the the Twilight Zone. This show was a fantastic show. It was a bunch of weird scenarios that, nothing connected together. It was just weird independent shows. Black Mirror has taken that formula, the anthology show of weird shit, and applied it to technology, which is possibly one of the smartest and most clever things that has been done in TV. And what's crazy is shit that they came up with like 2 years ago, you're starting to see like happen in real life. Like the first episode of Black Mirror I watched was the episode where everything that you do on social media gets tracked and you get points. It's a point system. And if you're not in like this certain tier, you're a lesser citizen, to whereas like you can't get deals on flights, you can't get into certain restaurants, you can't get all kinds of shit. If you're like down, if you have like a 1 star, you can't get into McDonald's. You're basically blacklisted from society. What you're seeing now is like in China, they're actually doing that. They're doing that exact system where they're monitoring everybody's social media and they're applying point systems to where they will restrict your flight travel. They will restrict certain things that you could get. It's freaky shit that they, put out there 2 years ago that's happening today. I mean, they also do an episode on the Halo system where you put like a chip or something in your kid and you could see like what your kid sees. They're talking about just, living in a simulation, like what that would be like. I mean, they cover these different technological things every week and they do it very well. I mean, each episode is a film. It's riveting from start to finish. It's just, it's one of the most amazing shows that's out there now.
Question about that one, Nick.
Yeah,
I have not watched that one either. It sounds absolutely fascinating, but totally freakish. Is it currently on? When did it start? I mean, give me a ballpark.
Yeah, it's currently on. It's a Netflix show. I think it actually started in Britain. And and then they picked up the first 2 seasons, and then the third and fourth were strictly Netflix. It's great. There's not a single episode that sucks.
The first one kind of sucks.
First episode?
Yeah, with the pig fucking.
Yeah, but you know what? That's a pretty crazy show. Like, it's a pretty crazy episode.
Well, not really. I always tell people, honestly, whenever I recommend Black Mirror to people, I say don't watch the first episode. At least don't watch it first. Because you don't have to watch them in order.
Yeah.
I always say skip that. Because I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, oh, yeah, I tried Black Mirror, and the first episode is just so ridiculous that I can't watch. I never watched another one. And I don't want, because I do like that show as well. But like that one was like I could see where people that could be kind of cringy for people.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you a question here.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So Adam, you're obviously a fan of this Black Mirror, which is nothing wrong with being a fan of a show that you don't have on your list. It's interesting to me though that you have recommended to other people. If you had to choose Homeland or Black Mirror, which one is it and why?
Okay, now don't get me wrong, I like Black Mirror and everything, but I've actually given season 1 of Homeland to people to like on DVD to watch. Like that's how much I've recommended that show. Like I feel like people need to see that first, at least the first season, and let them decide whether they're gonna be interested in watching the rest of it. I don't want to tell too much about I know you get kind of into the like different stories because you can, but I don't really want to give away the story because it's so thrilling. Like
Sure,
I've never watched this show.
I don't want you to.
Yeah, I've never watched this show and felt so like on the edge of my seat, like what in the hell is about to happen? And that's the way I felt with Homeland. Now, I'm not saying that Black Mirror isn't a good show, and I've recommended it to people too. But I mean, I just love Homeland. That first season, it'll get you hooked. Basically, that's my opinion.
Adam, did you put any thought into putting Black Mirror on your list?
Yeah, I did. There's a couple of shows that I've watched on Netflix that I really like. Black Mirror is one of them. End of the Fucking World is one of them. What's the one about the serial killer? Mindhunter. Oh, and I love Mindhunter. Like I think that's such a good show. But I didn't put them on there just because I didn't think that any of those shows were watched widely enough. Now you could say that and laugh because then I have Mr. Show on here. But at the same time, like they're all newer shows. You know what I mean? They're all very recent shows for the most part. You know, they're still going on and that's why I didn't put them on because I just don't think that a lot of people have seen them. I'm not saying a lot of Netflix people have, but a lot of general people haven't seen those shows from Netflix because they're
here's like to counter that argument, like he's bringing up a Showtime show that if you don't have Showtime, you haven't seen Homeland. I haven't had Showtime in years. Homeland, I've never seen it. You've recommended it to me multiple times. I could
listen to me with these, Nick.
And I find Claire Danes to be actually really cute.
Oh, dude! If you're like into Claire Danes, dude, you love this show. She does the most perverted shit in the show. She basically screws like everyone to get information throughout all seasons.
Well, that's a good egg right there.
Yeah. So there you go. You're convinced. I went round number 3.
No, when it comes to Black Mirror, though, even the pig fucking episode, is still, I think, a very cool concept because, and I'll be honest, I forget the details of why this politician had to fuck the pig. What
they said someone had. Okay, he's it's like in England, I think someone in the royal family or one of his, like he's in the royal family, and one of his relatives.
He was the prime minister. Someone in the royal family got kidnapped.
Yeah.
And what did they do? They used social media as the thing, right? To be the
that one. It was just like a live, like everyone had all the news. Like it was less technology driven, in my opinion, than all their other shows.
But it focused around like using social media to manipulate, which is something that you see today. Something that like is used as a tool to really just destroy society, which is what that show was.
All right, my decision has been made. Okay. Again, I have not watched one single episode of either one of these shows. They both do sound fascinating to me. Homeland I've actually heard of before. Black Mirror I've actually never heard of before. I'm going to base my decision in round 3 strictly off of which one of you made me more interested in the show and which show I'm kind of somewhat fascinated by with currently based off of what you said about it. It's got to go to Black Mirror. It sounds fascinating to me, and I'm going to look into watching it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that show. I can't wait for season 5.
Adam, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love that show too. And if you haven't watched it and you want to see, this is kind of my pitch for it. This is what I tell people: if you want to see how fucked up the world can get because of technology, watch Black Mirror, and they come up with things that you wouldn't even, I've never even thought of, but they've made it. And then people say, yeah, that's kind of possible, like the way they did this. And then China started doing this, and it's just like disturbing.
It's really creepy.
It is. Well, like I feel like they're like geniuses, the people who write that show.
I mean,
They have to be.
Yeah. And not to get into like Thursday's show or anything like that. But like if you look at what social media is doing now, it's kind of like that the social media show in a sense that like how they're blackballing people from all their platforms. I mean,
it's social engineering.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what it is. But like, not all of the shows are just that. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of other stuff. I don't want you to think that that's just what it is. No, there's so much more.
Yeah, that's season 3, episode 1. They do it in a, to use a British term, cheeky way. But, man, it hits the fucking nail on the head.
Okay, so Black Mirror can be found on Netflix, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to check it out. Nick, round 4. You're up.
All right. Okay, I'm going to go to the original OG of the.
Bless you, Martin. Is that what you're going to go with?
Yeah, I'm not going to go with Martin. I'm going to go with the original OG of the shows that were uncensored, that went onto a premiere channel that gave you the raw, the violence, everything else, and that is The Sopranos. This show ran for 7 seasons, and you talk about shows that have revolutionized TV. Sopranos did something by taking a serial and moving it to a platform where it could be shot like a film, have basically no regulation like films, and continue on this path through 7 seasons. In this show, they also did something that hadn't been done before, and they actually killed off main characters, and that became a staple. And you wouldn't know when it would come because, like in the Mafia, you don't know when your time is up. They just would whack people, and that was that. It was fantastic characters that were developed that you loved that may die, and they may die in like season 3. Like you might follow this one character for 3 years and like he's done, he's taken care of. But the show was great. Every episode was interesting. There's some legendary episodes like with the Russian, that just one that popped in my head that everyone remembers and thinks about. But that changed TV. That set up everything. And there's a couple shows on your list, The Wire for one. There would be no Wire. There would be no Weeds or Californication if it wasn't for Sopranos. That opened the door to everything else. That was the original. And that was the best.
Okay, Adam, what do you have to put up against The Sopranos?
Okay. This is the hardest show. I mean, hardest like gangster show that you could ever imagine. But that's what I'm going to go up against it with is the Golden Girls. I mean, think about 4 loony old ladies. And think about them coming up with the idea of this show. It would never get done today. I mean, 4 old ladies that aren't Hollywood attractive anymore because they're old bags. But they do all this loony shit. And it's a new story every week. And that son of a bitchin' show is hilarious. I don't care who you are. I mean, and it's wholesome and hilarious. Like, I would rather watch that than most of these shows on both of our lists. Like, if it's on all the time, if I'm flipping through and Lifetime, I flip through Lifetime and it's on, I'm going to get suckered into watching it. And you know it, Nick. Golden Girls is the bomb. It's just, it may not be quite as, pushing the edge, but it is really a funny show. I mean, when you have those wacky old ladies doing shit, and the one's like a whore, in like the most like wholesome way, but like it's just hilarious.
Nick, please give me your comparison between Sopranos and the Golden Girls.
What's the score?
It's 2-1 you.
Right now it's 2-1 you, Nick.
All right.
Are you thinking about forfeiting to the Golden Girls? I feel like that's what you're thinking about.
I mean, look, I don't want to forfeit. I can't argue against the wholesome Golden Girls. They really are just charming old bags. But like the thing is, everybody loves Goodfellas. It's a great movie. It's you watch these guys, you're like, I want to be in the mob because that looks fun. Basically, you get that for 7 years or 7 seasons with Sopranos.
Sorry. I didn't think I wanted to be in the mob when I watched that movie, but I thought it was cool. I'm not like trying to go to jail, but all right, go ahead. So Nick, are you an organized crime now? You've watched a lot of this mafia stuff.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm just the watcher. I don't do. I just can't. I don't have the cojones, as they say in the mafia.
Yeah. You're not ice picking people or thinking about it all day long.
I'm thinking about it. I'm just not doing it. I'm just waiting to snap. I'll be on.
Yeah.
Snap. I won't be on Sopranos.
Oh.
My next question for you, Adam, here is about runtime. Can you give me a ballpark that's actually accurate in terms of the runtime for the Golden Girls?
I think the Golden Girls is like about 22 minutes. Like if I were to guess.
No. Okay, let me.
Oh, you mean years? I thought you meant episode.
Is something like that.
Man, you know what? I don't have any idea how long the Golden Girls ran, but it's the repeats have been on for 10 times longer than the actual show. And I mean, it's still hilarious. It's still worth watching. How long? Do you know how long it was on?
No, but can you believe Betty White's still alive?
I know.
No, Betty White died like a week ago.
No,
what?
Yeah, she did, dude. Betty White died.
Did. You're a
Yeah,
liar.
Okay, Nick, you gotta Google this. I don't believe it. She's the last hombre.
I'm being.
You know what's funny about? You know what's funny about Golden Girls? The old lady, the old grandmother of all, she's actually one of the youngest ones. Her and Betty White were the youngest ones, and she played the oldest one.
She didn't.
The Golden Girls was a TV series from 1985 only until 1992. It felt like it was a lot longer. I guess obviously because we grew up with the reruns.
Well,
are you sure Betty White didn't die?
Yeah,
7 years is still a pretty long time.
Alive. You're thinking of Mac Miller.
No. Yeah, I used to get those two mixed up all the time. I don't have to worry about that anymore, luckily.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, but Golden Girls, like in their just the things that they get into every episode of that show. You talk about not having any lull because it was like you said, like these short shows. There's no lull in them at all. It's hard to fill an hour show, and the Golden Girls never. I mean, they were heartwarming, but they're also really funny. And I mean, it was just funny, like that cute old lady saying all those like ignorant things to people.
Just give us a
great
point.
The Golden Girls was like all good, clean, loving humor and fun. Adam, you win round 4.
Oh fuck, The Sopranos. You know what's bad about The Sopranos for me? I've watched some of it. I've never watched the whole thing, and I know that I would like it.
It is, but the thing. Going back to the runtime, you're talking about hour-long episodes. I've tried to get back into rewatching that series. I really want to go through it, but like hour-long episodes, man, they kill me.
I have rewatched
I'm gonna grab a beer real quick.
Yeah, it's fine. I have rewatched The Wire. I mean, to rewatch shows with like 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons is tough. Yeah. It's like a real commitment to like really do it. And like winter, it's almost like what you have to do now with binge watching. You have to essentially, like in the summer, like up here, like people are doing stuff. In the winter, it gets dark at 5:30. It's miserably cold. So like you set your schedule for like the whole winter of things. You like have a list now and say, I gotta watch these shows. And that's pretty much what people do.
That is true.
Okay, fifth and final round. Adam, you are up first. What do you got? We're down to the nitty-gritty.
This is tough. I like all these shows. Obviously, I put them on my list. I would say probably if it was like an actual ranking, like if you typed it in ranking-wise, I'd probably say The Wire is probably the highest rated show. But I'm going to go with Curb Your Enthusiasm. Now, you like Seinfeld. You're a big Seinfeld fan. But Curb Your Enthusiasm is way more up my alley. I think because it's a little bit more racy, because it's an HBO show and they can get along and stuff. But when you have Larry David, who was one of the writers of Seinfeld, and he plays himself. And he just goes around and just completely is always fucking everything. Everything's so awkward for everyone. It's just hilarious to me. And they actually write him parts where he's always like with these women and stuff. And I mean, he probably is because he's rich. But like to look at him, that's funny enough in its own. But like just the storylines that they do, that's a really, really funny show. Like that's a good way to. And then they have like some of the Seinfeld cast come back and play themselves, because it's basically everyone's playing themselves the way people would view them, but they're not really. They're playing a character that is themselves. But it's just really a funny concept. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think that's a tough one for you to beat with.
Okay, Nick, before you bring yours to the table, quick question for you, Nick. It's a yes or no question. Are you a fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I've seen I'd say
yes or no question.
Of it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny.
Yes or no, and you went blah, 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 yeah. So thanks for following the rules. Nick, what show would you like to bring to the table here?
Oh, man, it's either Frasier or Wonder Years. I think I would get more brownie points with Wonder Years.
I feel like you're trying to get a reaction right now. It's not going to happen.
Is that cheating? Is that cheating and debating?
Yeah, you're borderline disqualified right now because you got like real close to the camera.
Yeah,
so you can watch my face. You're like, I'm going to bring up 2 or 3 and see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go Frasier. Frasier was actually a spinoff show from Cheers. A lot of people, I don't know if they remember that or not, but he was a character on Cheers, got his own show once that show ended, and it turned into a monster of its own. I mean, this show ran for over 10 years. Extremely funny. The reruns still very rewatchable. It's something that you can watch over and over again. It falls into the same Seinfeld category. Also a broadcast television show. So this was actually part of the hit Thursday night lineup, that networks would put together so that they could get the viewership. Like, this is one of their heavy hitters. Every character in the show was A, well developed, and B, extremely likable. It also gets back to the wholesome category, to where you can't really watch Curb Your Enthusiasm with everybody in your family. You might not even want to watch it with your parents sometimes, because they do some pretty nasty.
Not that bad.
Sometimes.
It's not that bad.
Sometimes.
It can't be worse than Sopranos.
But I've had multiple good memories of watching Frasier with my mom and our grandfather, and it's a great show. Argue against Pep-Up.
Well, I'll say this: Frasier they really did well with that show. Like as being a spinoff. It's funny, these are both spinoffs.
Yeah.
You know, they're not Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm isn't really a spinoff, but it's like it kind of is,
Well,
but it's
it
not,
is because Larry David, the character George Costanza was based on Larry David. So this is basically George Costanza's show.
It's more behind the scenes, though, a little bit for Curb Your Enthusiasm. Whereas Frasier, you know, he played this character at a bar. You know what's funny about that? He became famous for being at the bar, Cheers, and then they had the spin-off show. But that guy never went to the bar after that. Like, they lose track of it. Like, the fact that, like, he was always at a bar on Cheers, but never in a bar on Frasier is kind of funny. I just thought of that.
Yeah, he spent his time in the coffee shop with his brother.
Yeah, like... Maybe, well, I think maybe Kelsey Grammer was a reformed alcoholic. Maybe he was just kind of like, they wrote that in without telling anyone.
So that brought me to my question I was going to ask, and I think you just answered it, Adam. Frasier was the Kelsey Grammer, correct?
Yeah. And he had his brother Niles and his dad were the main cast.
First off, we'll get back to how much Kelsey Grammer resembles David Letterman, but that's a different conversation. Where did the Kelsey Grammer show come into play? That was after Frasier?
Was there a Kelsey Grammer show, Nick?
I never saw it.
Yeah, it was called The Kelsey Grammer Show.
Oh.
What was that on? CW?
I wasn't like a fan of it or anything, but I very specifically remember that being on cable. Okay, well, thanks for the input on that one, guys. Go ahead.
Neither of us, we were clueless on that one.
Wow. Yeah,
I believe you, though.
Adam, why Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm instead of Kelsey Grammer and Frasier?
Well, I just think that the comedy is, and I like Nick's show. Like, he picked Frasier because it was a very long running show. But basically those shows, I don't want to say they killed, I want to say they killed network TV. But what has happened with network TV is they've completely gotten away from those shows. And they've gone towards the Curb Your Enthusiasms. They've gone towards like these Black Mirror type shows, where they could be a little bit racier, touch a little bit hotter topics. They're not kind of just going over the same, like we're going to make light, make some sort of interesting story out of nothing just because day-to-day life, where these other shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm does that, but it gets so raunchy and it's so funny. And it's just, you don't think anyone could write was it Mr. Bean who always screws everything up, or he's always into some sort of shit? You don't think you could ever write it where you could just completely keep screwing things up over and over again and it just continue to be funny and not predictable. But like, it's just ridiculous, but it's still so funny. So, I mean, I think Frasier is a lot of those, it's along the lines with, Seinfelds and Cheers, and it's kind of the same clean comedy, but the clean comedy, the whole world has moved away from clean comedy. No one watches or writes clean comedy anymore. All the network shows that they write that are clean comedy now, they fail. Nobody watches.
I agree. The world is going to hell in a handbasket.
I was gonna say society's a fucking toilet bowl now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, Curb Your Enthusiasm has kind of evolved with it, whereas Frasier was kind of the end of that. Yeah,
if society is a toilet bowl and you guys are the urinal cakes, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, we're freshening shit up. But yeah, okay, it was the end of the golden era of TV. I mean, it wasn't able to be replaced. They had no other heavy hitter after that. They tried to like spin off fucking Matt LeBlanc's character.
That's what I was gonna say. Matt LeBlanc is the guy. How many network shows has he been part of?
Exactly.
So many. It's embarrassing.
But Curb Your Enthusiasm, like that show was great when he was just George Costanza and Seinfeld, because that awkward cringeworthiness is great as a side character or as part of an ensemble. But I feel as a standalone, it just...
Well, he has an ensemble. You should watch it because you
cringe. Like it is cringeworthy. I mean, I get the fact that it's funny, cringeworthy. And it is. It's a funny show. Larry David's a very funny guy. I think that character is better suited as a side character. Personally, I like Seinfeld better than Curb Your Enthusiasm.
and
it's
but see, I'm not what's funny about that is I'm not like Quaid. I'm not like a big Seinfeld fan. Like I would watch it. I've watched it more recently in life, but reruns catch it here and there. But I never really cared, and I still don't really care about it. But Curb Your Enthusiasm is just so funny to me. Like I would watch that. Like anytime it's on, if I see it's on or a new season's coming, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna DVR it. It's just to me the shit that they do on that show is just way funnier than what they did on Seinfeld. But that's just because I like a certain kind of comedy, you know? And it's obviously
Adam,
much different.
Question, Adam. I'm going to go on record saying I've never watched either one of these shows either, which is fine. So I'm trying to wrap my head around all of this. Curb Your Enthusiasm, is it still on TV?
Yeah, you know, they act like there wasn't going to be a season, then they had another season. So I don't know. It's one of those shows where it's like basically, so because you haven't seen it. So Larry David was the basically co-writer of Seinfeld with Seinfeld. And he wasn't on camera. And basically this is a show where Larry David is the star of the show. And he's playing himself, and he's out in LA, and he's just like kind of living his life as Larry David from the writer of the Seinfeld show with all of his money and all of his stuff. But he's just, the character is so quirky and funny. Yeah, I mean, that's, that just to kind of give you an idea of what you haven't seen.
Yeah, he's quirky and funny and very George Costanza.
Yeah, okay, so speaking of which, I do have a very important question, and bonus points go to the first person who can answer it. I had this conversation the other day with my brother, actually, and he quoted a movie, and he said, "Hey, life goes on, Corky." What, or not a movie, a show. What was the name of that show?
Facts of Life.
Yeah. No, it was the other one with that, I don't. I know who you're talking about.
Corky,
Corky
had Down syndrome.
The theme song.
You don't have to laugh about it. Corky had Down syndrome, and
it wasn't Facts of Life. Life Goes On.
Life Goes On.
I think it might have been Life Goes On.
Yeah.
Obla-dee-obla-da, Life Goes On. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're
Growing
right.
Pains. Growing Pains. That was the show.
No, Growing Pains was the one with the Ben Savage, wasn't it?
No, that was Boy Meets World.
Okay, Fred Savage. What's the other one?
That was Wonder Years.
Yeah, but it wasn't Growing Pains. That was one with the Seavers.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. I got their names all mixed up.
You know what's funny about all those shows you just named? That is like a whole era.
None of them made the list.
None of them made the list. No one even thinks about the shows. None of them get replayed anymore. And those are all really, at the time, are really big shows.
You know what else I can't believe didn't make the
list?
list?
That was Life Goes On.
Is that what it was? You look it up?
Yeah.
Yep.
I want you to also look up the main character in Growing Pains, the Seavers. I felt like that was a Savage, one of the oldest Savage brother, but I don't think that's right. Nobody talked about the TGIF shows when we were growing up. I mean, there was some amazing shows.
With like Steve Urkel?
Yeah. Family Matters, that's what you're talking about. Step by Step, Boy Meets World.
Well, Nick and I have a good friend. His name's Mike, and he had a Steve Urkel doll that you'd pull a string on it, and it would say yeah.
Did I do that?
Did I do that? He cut a hole in that thing's butthole, and he raped it his whole adolescence.
He did.
Really? Wow, that must have been a really big doll or a really small dick.
It was a mixture of both.
It was an average.
They were both average size.
But honestly, Steve Urkel's show, I mean, I obviously watched it at some point, but the only thing I remember about that show was Mike and his Steve Urkel doll when we were little kids. It's just a funny thing.
You know, I don't know about you guys, but one of my fondest memories of growing up, you know, like around home, it's right up there with like having dinner at the table every night as a family. Was Friday night. It's what we did. We had dinner. We got popcorn going or some type of snack. We all sat down in the living room and we watched TGIF. That's a completely dying thing.
Yeah.
In day and age.
So is eating with your family and doing anything without your phone.
All of that is completely dying, which is sad.
That's why society's a disaster now.
Right, but you guys remain to be the urinal cakes, and we thank you for that.
You're thinking of Nick, Kirk Cameron for Growing Pains. By
Kirk Cameron.
Cameron.
That's the one.
That was it.
That's the one. I kind of thought somebody talk about Fresh Prince also.
Yeah.
I can't believe Nick didn't have Seventh Heaven on his list.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's what I was telling you before Quaid got on was I came up with 7. Then my last 3, like I drew a blank and I was like, well, you know what? I'll just throw whatever show pops in my head. And it happened to be, what was it? Martin.
Small Wonder.
Small Wonder, yeah. I'll explain that after the ruling.
Yeah, I never heard of that before.
I'm also.
You did actually, but you'll remember when I bring it up. But
when we were going through these lists, I had an interesting thought, and I thought, I wonder what this would look like if 2 females came up with their top 10, because these are all like very like manly shows, like like Home Improvement didn't make the list. What in the world?
Yeah, now you're right. It would be totally different if it was a woman, like women doing this.
It'd be like Grey's Anatomy and what else?
ER,
Young and the Restless,
Days of Our Lives,
Knots Landing,
Knots Landing, Dallas.
Yeah.
If you're like 70.
So round 5, we got Adam with Curb Your Enthusiasm. We have Nick with Frasier. I'm a little bit torn here. I will say this. I've never watched either one of them, as I told you before. The argument that made me most interested in actually watching the show is Adam. I'm super fascinated with the idea of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I'm somewhat familiar with it. I knew that it was Larry David and that he was one of the writers on Seinfeld. I think probably one of the reasons I never really got into it or watched it is because I was never really a fan of Seinfeld. However, I've heard a lot of people say really good things about the humor that they have in the show Curb Your Enthusiasm. Nick's argument for Frasier is interesting, and it's kind of along the same lines of Seinfeld in the fact that it was revolutionary. They recorded it for 9 seasons, which is a long time, especially in that day and age. 9 seasons to keep an audience coming back weekly for an hour setting. And for that reason alone, Nick, I'm giving you the win here with Kelsey Grammer and Frasier.
Hell yeah.
So that means
I feel good about that. You know, the dad died recently, I think like a year ago. It's for you, Martin.
The dog's dead too.
Dog's dead too.
Did you guys see a striking resemblance between Kelsey Grammer and David Letterman, or is it just me?
After you mentioned it, yeah, I do see it.
Yeah. Like David Letterman to me seems like a little guy though, and Kelsey Grammer seems like a bigger guy.
Yeah.
Who do you think is more well endowed?
A lot like.
Oh, Kelsey Grammer, he's fucking.
You think he's packing the heat?
Yeah, he's got that.
He did have like a supermodel wife, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he cheated on her.
Yeah, look,
you know
that guy cheated on
supermodels. You know what attracts the supermodels? It has nothing to do with their girth. It's all about the amount of money that they're worth. So ironically, they both probably have supermodel wives.
And they probably both have little dicks.
Exactly, and that's why their wives left them. So it looks like our top 5 is as follows: Nick with Seinfeld, Adam with Breaking Bad, Nick with Black Mirror. I'm super interested in that one. I'm going to watch that. Adam with kind of a wild card there, the Golden Girls. I got to be honest, Nick, you had the Sopranos up against the Golden Girls. I thought you did a great, phenomenal job of arguing for the Sopranos and talking about how they kind of were the ones that created the killing off the main characters and blah, blah, blah. I was with you. Like, you had me convinced, and then you started talking about like throwing in the towel and forfeiting the Golden Girls, and then you basically just gave up, and you know, Adam stole it from there. And then
how do you argue against the Golden Girls?
Oh, right. Round 5 goes to Nick with Frasier. So the winner for the week is Nick, 3-2. We'll go one at a time. Do you guys have any shows on your list that you want to say anything about?
Well, I will say The Wire is a really good show if you've never watched it. It's another one you have to commit a lot of time to because it's multiple seasons, but that's a really good show. Pretty groundbreaking stuff. Eastbound Down I put in there basically for the first season with Kenny Powers. And
it's just hilarious. It's full of one-liners. It's amazing.
Yeah, the one-liners in that show are classic. Mr. Show with Bob and Dave. I mean, I remember being a little kid. I mean, I don't know what age, maybe like 11, 12. And my buddy Mike, the same one with the Steve Urkel doll, we would watch that on HBO. And then we'd go riding around on four-wheelers, and we go up to the hill. And there was this one skit on there where this guy comes out of his cabin in the woods, and he goes, damn, shit. And he starts getting loud, and he's like, fuck. Fuckity, fuck. And we used to do that. We still do it all the time. I mean, that show, that's where you have like, with prices of beef going through the fucking roof. Like they're doing a commercial for a burger store and they go up to this family and she's like, with the prices of beef going through the fucking roof. And then, you know, I can feed my whole family for blah, blah, blah. And then some other guys, like 2 guys are eating a hamburger. This is the last point I'll make on this. 2 guys are eating a hamburger at this fast food place. They're filming a commercial. And this guy bites into it. He goes, holy shit, this little motherfucker is tasty. And the other guy's like,
fucking ass.
Yeah. I mean, this shit.
You asshole.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be a commercial for TV. But that show is just really funny. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, that show is great.
One of my favorite skits on that is when the rock band and they have the party video come out. They're like, dude, this is an issue. And they start playing the party video and they're all snorting coke and shooting heroin and rocking out. They're like, so what, man? It's rock and roll. This is what we do. They're like, no, you got to let it keep rolling. All of a sudden you see like this dude fucking. And then like the camera pans down and it's like the bassist, the other dude that's in the band.
Yeah, he's like...
And they're in the hot tub and like, dude, I'm so horny right now. It's like, well, I got a boner. Well, suck that shit. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Oh my god, that show is probably 25 years old. The guy who's in Better Call Saul, he's Saul, was Bob Odenkirk. He was the one he was Bob from that show.
Then
David Cross, yeah. But so then I got that one's probably one of my favorite shows of all time. Insomniac with David Tell. I remember watching that in college. And basically David Tell would just go around and get drunk with like local people whenever he was on comedy tour. I don't know if you guys ever saw that show. That probably never gets reruns. But basically he would just go to all these little towns and he's doing his comedy act. But then after he's going out and drinking with all these people and he's in like, just like random Americana, you know what I mean? And they're all hammered because it's 2:00 in the morning. So that was always a funny show. And then the last one I had that I didn't argue was Freaks and Geeks. And if you look at just the people who are on that show, like it's crazy where all these people like in Hollywood got their start. It was like Freaks and Geeks. When it was on, I don't think anyone watched it. But like reruns of it. Oh, you never watched Freaks and Geeks? It's such a funny show.
Let me tell you something. When I read through your list originally, and even still to this point, my favorite show, legitimately, without question, my favorite show on your entire list is Freaks and Geeks. I love that show.
Such a good show.
and it's a star-studded cast. There's, like you said, there's a lot of people that got their start there. That is probably the one show I ever remember as a kid going over to my friend's house, and we would go over there every week. We'd go over there. His mom and dad would make us dinner, and then we'd watch the show, and then me and my brother would come home. And we weren't even like little kids. We were, I think my brother was old enough to drive at the time, so I was probably like 14 years old or something. That sound about right?
Yeah, probably. Oh, that was a good show.
That was a funny show.
Such a fun. Nick, you should watch that one too. Man, you better get this list together.
I know, right?
Nick, you would love Freaks and Geeks. You would like that humor and that comedy. Nick, anything on your list that you want to talk about? No. Nope.
Well,
okay.
Obviously, I had Wonder Years, which is, to me, Wonder Years is the best show of all time. I mean, Californication is also up there, but Wonder Years, it's always going to be near and dear to my heart because I grew up on that shit. I think Wonder Years was instrumental in forming my taste of music. Just the stories in that show were great. It was funny. It was pure, and it was just a great show all around.
Well written.
You ever think about a lot of those types of shows, and a lot of them are on this list, or some of them are, but a lot of the shows we watched growing up, TGIF shows that we're fond of and whatnot, they were all family based. That's long gone because I think it's gone in the household in general. But that stuff doesn't even hardly exist on television shows anymore, which is crazy.
No, not at all.
Like
changing time, I guess.
Yeah, that Thursday, it used to be the hottest thing. Thursday night, 8:00. That's when the battle for the best show on television was, basically between all the networks.
Yep.
And now it basically is like reality shows, Bachelor, Bachelorette, it's American Idol type shit. It's not any type of intelligent like writing shows. And then if there are shows, they don't last because they're not any good.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to bring this up later because I was thinking about this earlier, but I'll bring it up now because you basically just did. An interesting episode that we could do would be top 10 reality shows. Sometime we can discuss that and see if we want to do that. Nick, what else you got on your list?
Hold on, I think that's either my cat screaming or a baby.
Is your cat
All
screaming?
right.
For real? You just mistook your cat for a baby.
Yeah, I do it all the
For
time.
your own baby, not for like a random baby.
I forget to feed one or the other, and then all of a sudden something's crying. So I also had Weeds on my list, which was a Showtime show about a house mother who recently becomes a single parent because the dad died of a sudden heart attack, and to make ends meet, because she's they're upper middle class, so to make ends meet, she starts selling weed, and then she the progression from her just being like a small time drug dealer to like drug kingpin. It's just it's a crazy story,
and it's funny too, isn't it?
It's very, very fucking funny. Kevin Nealon, as was mentioned, he's in it and is just one of the funniest characters in TV. Just great character.
Storyline or plot wise, this might sound ignorant, but I don't know because I'm not familiar with these shows. It's kind of sort of along the same general premise as Breaking Bad, right or no?
I mean, Breaking Bad,
somebody getting into drugs to try to make some money or whatever.
Yes, I think that's why a lot of people get into drugs.
Yeah, I think Breaking Bad, though, it wasn't like, it's not lighthearted at all. It's more just like it's like a drama. It's strictly a drama show.
Gotcha. Weeds has some comedy in it.
Comedy to it. Yeah.
The Weeds is purely a comedy show. I will say that the only blemish on Weeds was season 5 kind of sucked. And it still had high moments that, but it still had like high points that were really funny. But overall, the season sucked.
Like they took that year off.
They rebounded pretty nicely in season 6.
Hey, have either one of you ever watched? I think this is an Amazon original. Have either one of you ever watched the series Hung.
That's an HBO. That's an HBO show. I've watched episodes of it. That's I've never actually tuned in for it, but I've seen episodes of it. It seemed all right.
I watched it. I think I watched it an entire season or a couple of seasons, however many there were. It's super interesting. It's a gym teacher. I can't remember the exact details, but it's a high school gym teacher who is going to lose his job, or maybe he does lose his job. He goes through a divorce, and then he realizes that the one thing that he is really good at and should be capitalizing on is his girth and his stamina in the bedroom. So he decides to start doing it as a business. There's some comedy in it. I don't know. It's kind of far-fetched. But
sounds like my life story. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
No, that show, like, I remember it when it was on. People were really like that show, and I've seen it and I thought it was good, but it wasn't one that, like, I didn't keep up with it or anything. I've seen episodes.
It's very far-fetched. It's kind of a repeat too. Once you saw 5 or 6 episodes, you've pretty much seen 5 or 6 seasons. Nick, you got anything else on your list? What is this Small Wonder? I've never heard of that.
Small Wonder. It's a show that I totally forgot about and don't even know if I actually ever watched a full episode. But I watched a video on YouTube about the worst sitcom episode ever, and it was a Small Wonder episode. But basically, the show premise is it's about a family who has a girl who's not really a girl. She's a robot that the dad constructed. And once they said that and showed a picture of the girl, like she wears like a red dress and everything, is like,
was she hot?
I remember that. She was like 5. Or actually, she was probably like 11, but no.
I didn't hold you back in the princess conversation.
Sorry, that was funny to me.
She's a robot. She can't be hot.
Bullshit.
So anyway, getting back to the story.
You remember that maid from the Jetsons? That bitch was hot as shit.
You know, old man Jensen was hitting that.
Oh, absolutely. Guaranteed she had that great big blockhead leverage.
Fucking pervert.
Blockhead. Oh shit.
Anyway, the only other show on my list that needs mentioning is Cat House. I'm
disappointed that you never brought that to the table. This is what I thought when I see that you have Cat House on your list. It's kind of the wild card, and I was like, he's gonna throw that in there somewhere to have some real strange, crazy, obscure argument.
Yeah,
but apparently you just ran out of ideas, so that's why you put it on the list.
I kind of abandoned my strategy of always arguing the wild cards because I didn't want to fall too behind on Adam. But Cat House,
a good call.
Yeah, Cat House really is like a good show if you actually ever watched it. Like,
no, it's not at all.
No, it really is.
It is entertaining. Adam, you're right. You win this argument and this round. You get the point. It is very entertaining. It's not a good show.
Dude, it's fucking crazy. Like,
yeah.
You watch those awkward ass dudes.
Yeah, they come in. And
so is the Red Light District and Taxi Cab Confessions. They're all crazy. It doesn't make them good.
I mean, they're not wholesome, but it's an interesting show. Like, you sit there, you watch it, and you're like, holy shit, that's fucking weird. Like, this dude came into the Cat House, ordered like 6 girls, and all he had them do was walk on him in high heels. What the fuck? And that's what he's spending his
money for it too.
For 6 girls? Fuck yeah, he did. You got the dude that comes in and requests Bridget the midget. Like, that's fucking weird. Like,
I wonder how much money the guy that owns that place is worth. It's got to be a buttload.
Yeah, to me, I just like I would watch that show and it would baffle me. Like it was only I don't know if it was like the first season or the second season that I watched it, but I got into like the point where I was watching like every week, like it was every other show. I want to kill my fucking cat.
Well, it is an option. Speaking of the cat house.
Yeah.
Well, really, if you think about it, the cat house may have arguably been the very beginning stages of reality television.
No, you had Real World.
The Real World, yeah. But
Was that before?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess it had to have been before.
But still, the cat house was.
It's still one of the early on ones.
And it was something that really pushed a social norm for sure. Like something that wasn't normal. Like it was exposing the world to like, so is Taxi Cab Confessions though.
Yeah.
Like people saying all this shit in a taxi cab to some stranger without knowing they're on camera. They're just admitting to like all these wild things, telling stories. It's like,
you know what I'd like to see? You know what I would like to see Taxi Cab Confessions related? Not the stuff that they were able to film. I want to see the shit that people didn't sign off on, that they weren't allowed to show, because you know that those people had to sign a waiver saying, "Okay, yeah, go ahead and show it."
You know what that's called?
Stuff that people didn't sign off on.
That's called fake taxi. I think you'll find it on other websites.
Yeah, websites like Pornhub and UJizz.
UJizz?
UJizz.
Oh, I just introduced you guys to a life changer. What about The Simpsons? I was surprised that neither one of you had The Simpsons on your list.
I was going to put The Family Guy, and I thought about Simpsons, but then I was like, I'm not going to put any cartoons. I just made that decision, no cartoons, for myself.
Yeah.
Did it make you feel more mature by doing that?
No, I was thinking that at some point maybe we would do a cartoon show.
Yeah, we probably could for sure.
Yeah. And I think The Simpsons, like it's still on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been on since I was a little kid.
That thing is limping to the finish line.
Without a doubt, not the longest running animated show of all time. And really, to be honest with you. Nick, did you put any thought into The Simpsons on your list or not really?
I had the same thought as Adam. I put more thought into South Park, but
yeah,
along the same lines as Adam, I didn't want to do any animated.
Right. So real quick before we go, I'm gonna choose my favorite one off of each of your lists. Adam, I already chose my favorite off your list. It's Freaks and Geeks. Nick, real quick off of your list. Boy, it's down to either The Wonder Years or Cat House.
Talk about the extremes.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, and based off what a piece of shit I am, I'm gonna go with Cat House.
Good choice.
With that being said, Nick, you are the winner for this week's episode. Those of you that are listening, it is 9/11 of 2018. Do a good deed. Thank your first responders of some sort today.
I have a question. How come we didn't do the Patrick Swayze top 10 movies?
Yeah, that was our suggestion to Quaid this week. Yeah. Patrick Swayze top 10 movies. First off, I'm not sure if he was in 10 movies. That would have to be a draft.
Not 10 that should be discussed. I can tell you that this is the first episode that we've done, and I think this is our number 11, and I think this is the first one that we have not discussed Point Break in some way, shape, or form, which now, unfortunately, that's there.
You brought it up, dude.
I know. I was thinking Nick was gonna weasel something in, like figure out one show. One of those guys was off of that show, or some random show. I thought it was gonna be Cat House. I honestly thought it was gonna be Cat House, and he was gonna be like, the best episode of Cat House was when Patrick Swayze went in and fucked all the bitches. It would be like Gary Busey, more likely.
Yeah. Quaid, I can't believe you brought up Point Break again. I thought you were sick of talking about that movie.
You have no idea, dude. You have no idea. No idea. Okay, well,
Keep talking about it.
I'm going to sign off of here because now you're starting to irritate me. I thought we had a good conversation, a good debate. I gave Nick the W. I'm regretting that immediately. So make sure you check us out on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes. Check out our Facebook page. We also have a website that you can check out. If you have suggestions of a topic you'd like to hear us talk about in the future, please let us know. I have no idea, dude.
KellyDigitalPodcast.com and Kelly Digital on all those other sites you mentioned.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
All right, we're signing off. Adios, amigos.
Later.
Later.
Stop that one.